I want to address the great many videos out there about aerodynamics and about Newtonian versus Bernoulli and how airplanes fly. I'm going to prove them wrong. Now, of course I start out with a bold statement, I'm going to prove them wrong, and then I'm going to do it. I want to especially address this one. You know, YouTube really knows me, and they keep feeding me this stuff. So, I'm on the list, and they fed me one where the guy actually proves with a little wind tunnel thing right on the tabletop that Bernoulli effect does influence lift. He says under the bottom of the wing is the main source of lift, but Bernoulli effect does. I think he did his experiment wrong. Let me show you something. Now, not only he, but all the YouTubers got this one wrong. I had a neighbor when I was a kid who was a really hot aerodynamics professor, MIT. And, you know, he told me about all this stuff. I didn't exactly buy it, but he was very accomplished, and he was a really big Bernoulli fan, and I'm sure that his wings, actually saw one of them, it was very effective. He was a good engineer and knew his aerodynamics, but you can view this thing wrong and still be a very effective engineer. And in that respect, this is one of my least important videos, because you don't have to get the theory right to get the practice right. But here you go. This is very familiar to all. It is the flat bottom wing, it's got the curve on the top, it goes faster, blah, blah. This is not a fair way to conduct the experiment. What's wrong with this picture? Well, this is not the center of pressure. This is the center of pressure. And so if you want to do the experiment fairly, the trailing edge has to be on the same line as the, what a line. Ugh. Has to be on the same line as the center of pressure. Now, that doesn't look like it's going to produce lift anymore, does it? But if you don't do that, and you have the wind, you have this attitude here, well, since the trailing edge is down, you've actually canted the wing up. So now let's take a look at a different type of wing. We're going to take a look at the planar wing, a flat wing. Now, I was a kid once, and I made an airplane. And this was a control line airplane, you know, had the little gasoline engine, and very small. And it was a flat wing, because I had balsa wood, and I didn't want to go through a whole bunch of stuff. And I thought, it's got to work, right? It did. But, I mean, of course, it flew, duh. But it was a flat wing. And here's a flat wing. And we're going to call this, let's say it's a sheet of aluminum. Because paper gets kind of floppy. So we'll use aluminum for this one. And now, if we, I'll use my pen for the wing direction. If we cant it up, it's going to get lift. Now, the top is the same length as the bottom. Bernoulli doesn't work on this. So, but you know this is going to get lift because you have stuck your hand out the car window when it was going 60. Haven't you? When you were a little kid. Did you do that? Of course you did. So, we all know that. You can even just go like this and feel it, the wind on the bottom of your hand. So, this produces lift. But it produces terrible drag because you start getting these terrible wind buckets off the top there. I mean, it's bad. So we all know that. So what we try to do instead is make a nice smooth round nose, because we have shown experimentally that the fat nose and the tapered rear has less drag, and we follow that line down in a nice fair curve. And the point is to try to make the air, it's like this is getting lift, it's pushing down, we have downward pressure because we're directing air downwards. So on the top, we try to have a curve that will make the air follow it and be more ordered, and there you go. So less drag. So bottom lift, top drag. Leave the planar wing, the flat wing. Let's go supersonic. We're going to go really supersonic. Now, lift. Absolutely. Drag. Well, in this case, it doesn't matter anymore because we really have nothing here. We have nothing in here. The air did not have time to get down to here and interact with anything. It's like a propeller blade that goes supersonic. It leaves a wake of a vacuum, which, yeah, is a shock wave and it's a terrible waste of energy. It's a lot of drag. Now, in the planar wing, it's not the top that's drag. Well, the top is drag. It's the whole thing that drags. Obviously, when air hits the bottom, that's a source of drag too. Now, it's a glancing blow. And so, there's not as much drag as there would be for a brick. This is the standard. The flat piece of whatever is the standard for measuring drag. This has a coefficient of 1, and everything else is less than that. So let's look at another couple of types of wings. The scoop. The simple scoop. And this is, it doesn't have any thickness. It's made of, maybe it's made of fabric, like the Wright brothers wing, or an electric fan. And you can see it shoves the air down very nicely. As far as drag, yeah, it's got some. I don't know, it's not that bad. And in fact, airplanes do this too, especially ones that are made for the short takeoff and landing, the stalls proof ones and all that stuff. They have multiple, they're directing air that way. That's very clear, and they do an okay job of it. As far as drag, well, you try to make, we hope the air is going to be nicely directed around there. But the simple scoop is also used by birds. Of course, they have some thickness too. So it's a hybrid between the simple scoop and the thicker wing for the better airflow. Of course, they couldn't have paper thin wings because they have to have muscles and structure in there. Now let's take a look at the symmetrical wing. A nice, plain, symmetrical wing. Looks like the top of my electric car. Now, it's great for flying upside down and right side up. Let's put a little angle on it and see what happens. Okay, obviously we're going to get some lift. Now, you notice this one, of course, when it's level, the trailing edge is even with the center of pressure. Now, if we flatten the bottom side to be like your airplane wing, which we were supposed to test in the first place with your wind tunnel experiment, this is fair. This is the fair way to do it. And obviously, is not going to get us any more lift than that, the symmetrical wing. So, there's Bernoulli. It's out the window. Now, I will say the Bernoulli and Venturi have a point about the actual pressure on the wall of a vessel if, here's your vessel. A vessel full of still air, you have particles and they're going every direction, and many of them, the average is they hit the wall at a normal. But if you have I'm going to make my vessel round. That's round. And I put a fan so that air is circulating very fast. Well, now it's going to hit the wall at a glancing angle instead of at a normal, and that's going to result in less force against the wall. So there are two definitions of pressure. One is the force against the wall, and that's the Bernoulli, Venturi. They noticed that stuff. I think Venturi noticed it before Bernoulli, but I don't know. So the other type is this. PV equals nRT, small n, number of particles, gas constant, temperature, pressure, volume. Let's divide both sides by volume, and here's pressure. Pressure equals, there. So that's the pressure I know about, and when you fly through it, it does not change. That's the air pressure. Now, if we didn't have it, we couldn't measure air pressure right up when we fly up high. Well, that we know that the air pressure is, like only 5 pounds per square inch up there when it's 14 pounds down here. So even the aviation engineers respect that to some extent. That's what I call pressure. But hey, there are two definitions of pressure. There is this, the still air, and the moving air. Actual force against the surface. So something's wrong with that picture. Something's wrong with trying to call that neutral. It's not neutral. It's canted up. So you be the judge.